Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the heart of Eldoria, a realm where magic thrived and shadows lingered, lived a young magician named Cain. At 22, Cain was a figure of both promise and unrest. His unruly dark hair and piercing green eyes mirrored the tempest within him, a relentless drive to transcend his modest beginnings and etch his name into the annals of magical history. Eldoria was a land divided. Traditional magic practitioners revered ancient wisdom, while those who dabbled in dark arts were both feared and misunderstood. Cain's upbringing was humble. Raised in a small village on the outskirts of Eldoria's grand capital, he had always felt the sting of mediocrity. His parents, simple farmers, could offer little beyond encouragement, but Cain yearned for more. Magic was his escape, his sanctuary. Despite lacking formal training, his innate talent was undeniable. He devoured every tome he could find, learning spells and incantations with a fervor that set him apart from his peers. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Cain found himself wandering through the grand library of Eldoria. The library was a vast repository of knowledge, its towering shelves filled with books that held the secrets of the ages. It was here, hidden away in a forgotten corner, that Cain stumbled upon an ancient, dust-covered grimoire. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy, its pages brittle yet inviting. Cain's fingers traced the ornate cover, feeling a connection that went beyond mere curiosity. The grimoire spoke of forbidden rituals and powerful dark magic, promises of power that could bend the very fabric of reality. He knew he should leave it alone. Mentors and peers had warned him about the dangers of such knowledge. But ambition gnawed at him, whispering of greatness just beyond his grasp. That night, under the cloak of darkness and the eerie glow of a blood moon, Cain decided to perform the ritual described in the grimoire. The air was thick with anticipation as he arranged the symbols and incantations meticulously. The atmosphere crackled with energy, and as he began the invocation, a shadowy figure materialized before him, a demon of ancient lore, its presence both terrifying and intoxicating. The demon offered Cain a pact, unparalleled dark magic in exchange for his soul. The terms were vague, shrouded in ambiguity, but the allure of power was irresistible. Cain, driven by desperation and ambition, agreed without hesitation. The moment the contract was sealed, a surge of dark energy coursed through him, granting him abilities beyond his wildest dreams. Spells that once seemed impossible were now at his fingertips, and his reputation in the magical community soared. With his newfound powers, Cain quickly rose to prominence. He solved magical conundrums that had stumped others, protected his village from threats, and earned both admiration and fear. However, with each spell he cast, a piece of his humanity seemed to fade. Friends and mentors who once saw him as a beacon of potential now viewed him with suspicion and concern. Cain brushed off their worries, blinded by the intoxicating rush of power. As weeks turned into months, subtle signs of the demon's influence began to surface. Cain started experiencing vivid nightmares, where the demon whispered promises of even greater power and hinted at dire consequences should he fail to comply. Strange occurrences plagued his daily life via objects moving on their own, fleeting shadows darting just beyond his vision, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. One evening, as Cain practiced a particularly complex spell, he felt a tug at his very essence. It was as if an unseen force guided his hands, altering the incantation in ways he couldn't control. Panic set in as he realized that his actions were no longer entirely his own. The demon was exerting its influence, subtly manipulating his soul to bend his will. Determined to reclaim his autonomy, Cain delved into ancient texts, seeking any knowledge that could help him understand and break the contract. His research led him to forgotten lore that spoke of contracts with demons, agreements that could only be broken by fulfilling certain, often perilous conditions. The clock was ticking. The more Cain used the dark magic, the tighter the demon's grip became. Cain's quest for answers was fraught with challenges. He reached out to old friends and mentors, only to find them wary or outright hostile. Some saw him as a fallen prodigy, others feared the dark magic he wielded. Undeterred, Cain continued his search, driven by the growing realization that his ambition had led him down a path of damnation. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the darkened skies, Cain discovered a passage that hinted at a possible way to nullify the contract. It required a journey to the Shadow Realm, a place where demons resided and the veil between worlds was thin. The passage spoke of trials that would test his very soul, demanding sacrifices that Cain was reluctant to make. But the deadline loomed ever closer. The contract was not eternal. A finite period had been set, after which the demon would claim his soul completely. The urgency intensified as natural and societal upheavals began to manifest. Unprecedented storms ravaged the land, plagues swept through villages, and conflicts erupted seemingly out of nowhere. Cain realized that his unchecked use of dark magic was the catalyst for these disasters, and he felt a deep sense of guilt and responsibility. Facing the consequences of his greed, Cain knew he had to act swiftly. He embarked on his perilous journey to the Shadow Realm, armed with ancient spells, artifacts, and the remnants of his fading humanity. The path was treacherous, filled with both physical dangers and moral dilemmas that tested his resolve. Along the way, he encountered allies who saw the goodness still within him, as well as enemies who sought to exploit his vulnerability. Cain's journey was not just a battle against external forces but an internal struggle as well. He grappled with his own flaws, confronting the darkness within himself that had led him to this point. Each trial he faced brought him closer to understanding the true cost of his ambition and the importance of balance between power and responsibility. As the deadline approached, Cain felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The final confrontation with the demon was inevitable. He knew that to break the contract, he would have to confront the very entity that had granted him power, risking everything to reclaim his soul and restore balance to Eldoria. Cain pressed forward into the depths of the Shadow Realm, the air thick with malevolent energy that seemed to claw at his very soul. The landscape was a twisted reflection of Eldoria, where once familiar landmarks now stood corrupted and darkened. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks lost in a perpetual twilight, while rivers of molten lava carved through the land, illuminating the gloom with an eerie, pulsating glow. Every step Cain took felt heavier, as if the weight of his past choices anchored him to the cursed ground. The ancient spells and artifacts he carried provided some protection, but the pervasive darkness seeped into his thoughts, dredging up memories of his rise to power and the consequences that now plagued his world. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away, the deadline for the contract inching closer with each passing moment. As he ventured deeper, the trials he faced grew more formidable. The first test awaited him at the gates of despair, massive archways adorned with sinister symbols that pulsed with dark magic. Cain knew that to proceed, he had to confront his deepest fears. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, the gates swinging open with a deafening creak. Inside, he found himself surrounded by shadows that whispered his name, each one a manifestation of his guilt and regret. The shadows coalesced into forms he recognized as friends he had pushed away, mentors he had disregarded, and faces of those who had suffered because of his ambition. Their eyes bore into him with silent reproach, and Cain felt the sting of their disappointment. "Is this the greatness you sought?" they seemed to ask. At what cost? Cain struggled to maintain his composure. Drawing upon the lessons he had learned during his journey, he realized that true strength wasn't just about power, it was about understanding and rectifying one's mistakes. With newfound resolve, he addressed the shadows, acknowledging his faults and pledging to make amends. The shadows began to dissipate, their oppressive presence lifting as Cain embraced his vulnerability. Beyond the gates of despair lay the forest of echoes, where every sound was amplified, creating an overwhelming cacophony that threatened to drown him. Navigating through the dense foliage, Kane encountered illusions designed to mislead and distract him. Visions of alternate realities played out before his eyes, scenarios where he never sought the dark magic, where he remained content with his modest life, and others where his ambition led to even greater tragedies. Each illusion tested his commitment to breaking the contract. Kane had to discern truth from deception, relying on his inner voice rather than the seductive promises of the demon. The journey through the forest was arduous, but with each step, he felt a piece of the demon's influence weaken, replaced by a growing clarity of purpose. Emerging from the forest, Kane found himself at the edge of the abyss of regret, a vast chasm that seemed to swallow light itself. The path across the abyss was treacherous, requiring not just physical agility but emotional fortitude. As he began to cross, the ground beneath him gave way, and he plummeted into the darkness below. In the abyss, Kane was confronted by the demon once more. The air crackled with tension as the demon's form solidified, its eyes gleaming with malicious intent. "You cannot escape me, Kane," it taunted. "Your soul is mine, and your destiny is bound to my will." But Kane was no longer the same young magician who had made the pact. He stood taller, his eyes filled with determination and the wisdom gained from his trials. "I may have sought power recklessly, but I will not let you define me," he declared. "I will reclaim my soul and restore balance to Eldoria." The demon laughed, a sound that echoed ominously through the abyss. "Brave words, but actions speak louder. Let us see if your newfound resolve can withstand the true test." Without warning, the demon unleashed a torrent of dark magic, enveloping Kane in a maelstrom of shadows and flames. The battle was fierce, a clash of wills and powers that shook the very foundations of the Shadow Realm. Kane drew upon every ounce of strength and knowledge he had acquired, countering the demon's attacks with spells that combined both dark and light magic. The artifacts he carried glowed with an ethereal light, amplifying his abilities and providing a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. As the battle raged on, Kane realized that brute force alone would not defeat the demon. He needed to sever the bond that tied them together, the contract that had initially granted him power but now threatened to consume him. Focusing his energy, Kane began to chant an ancient incantation he had discovered during his research, a spell designed to nullify demonic contracts. The air shimmered with energy as the spell took effect, creating a barrier that pushed back the demon's darkness. The two forces clashed, the spell and the demon's magic intertwining in a dazzling display of light and shadow. Kane could feel the contract's hold weakening, the demon's influence receding as his own strength and determination surged. In a final, desperate effort, the demon summoned all its remaining power, launching a devastating attack aimed directly at Kane's heart. But Kane, fueled by his journey of redemption and the support of those he sought to protect, channeled the full force of the nullifying spell. A brilliant burst of light enveloped the battlefield, and the demon let out a final, anguished roar as it was banished back to the depths from which it came. Exhausted but triumphant, Kane stood alone in the now quiet Shadow Realm. The oppressive darkness had lifted, replaced by a serene stillness that spoke of balance restored. He felt a profound sense of relief and liberation, knowing that he had reclaimed his soul and broken free from the demon's grasp. With the contract nullified, Kane returned to Eldoria, where the aftermath of his actions was already being felt. The storms that had ravaged the land began to subside, the plagues receded, and conflicts started to resolve themselves as if a dark veil had been lifted. The people of Eldoria, wary and cautious, watched Kane's return with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Determined to make amends, Kane sought out those he had wronged. He apologized to his mentors, explaining the depths of his desperation and the control the demon had exerted over him. Some were slow to forgive, their trust shattered by his actions, but others saw the sincerity in his eyes and the genuine remorse in his heart. Slowly, Kane began to rebuild the relationships he had damaged, earning back the respect and trust of his community. Kane's experiences had profoundly changed him. He had learned that true power came with responsibility and that unchecked ambition could lead to devastating consequences. Embracing this wisdom, he dedicated himself to using his magic for the betterment of Eldoria, focusing on healing the land and protecting its people from threats both mundane and magical. In the months that followed, Kane became a beacon of hope and a symbol of redemption. He established a school of magic where he taught not only the traditional spells and incantations but also the importance of ethics and balance in the use of magic. His teachings emphasized that power should be sought not for personal gain but for the greater good, ensuring that future generations would learn from his mistakes. One evening, as Kane walked through the now peaceful forests of Eldoria, he reflected on his journey. The path had been fraught with darkness and despair, but it had also led him to a place of understanding and purpose. He knew that the scars of his past would always remain, a reminder of the fine line between ambition and greed. But he also knew that he had the strength to overcome them, to continue striving for a world where magic was a force for good. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the horizon, Kane felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. The lessons he had learned and the sacrifices he had made had forged him into a wiser, more compassionate magician. He had faced his inner demons and emerged victorious, not just in battle but in reclaiming his humanity. The story of Kane spread throughout Eldoria, inspiring others to seek redemption and to use their abilities responsibly. Kane's legacy was one of resilience, humility, and the unwavering belief that even in the face of darkness, the light within could prevail. His journey served as a testament to the power of self-reflection and the importance of striving for balance in all things. Years later, as Kane stood atop the highest tower of his school, overlooking the thriving lands he had helped restore, he felt a deep sense of peace. The hardships and trials he had endured were now part of his history, shaping him into the person he had become. He knew that challenges would always arise, but he was confident in his ability to face them with wisdom and courage. One crisp morning, as Kane prepared for another day of teaching and guiding young magicians, a familiar presence lingered in the air, a gentle reminder of the pact that had once bound him. He looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, and smiled. The darkness that had once threatened to consume him was now a distant memory, replaced by a future filled with hope and possibility. Kane's journey had come full circle. From a young magician driven by unchecked ambition to a wise and compassionate leader, he had learned that true greatness was not measured by power alone but by the ability to rise above one's flaws and to strive for the betterment of others. His story was a beacon for all who sought to harness the forces of magic, a reminder that with great power comes even greater responsibility. As the day unfolded, Kane continued his work, his heart light and his spirit unburdened. He knew that the world was a better place because of the choices he had made, the lessons he had learned, and the lives he had touched. The legacy of the Hell contract was not one of despair but of redemption, a story that would be told for generations to come. And so, under the vast expanse of Eldoria's sky, Kane walked forward, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in the knowledge that he had the strength to overcome them. His journey had taught him that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope and the will to change could illuminate the path to redemption.